GRI and myself, everybody that's been on the phone, Roger and Andy, you've coordinated the team great. Everybody is participating. Of course, all the team from Forest Marsh. We couldn't do this without you. And we'll proceed from here. So, and thank you, Michael, for getting all your team together and giving us this broad base of people. So thank you.
Thank you, Pam, and everybody on the GRI team. We really appreciate all your work.
Thank you.
Lily or Dan, we
All the scars and all the lines on my face, they show the times I've abandoned my own life. I can't breathe, I can't eat, so I just drink myself to sleep and embrace this morbid price. Maybe it's time to heal.
Hold on, James, 1 second. I'll get you unmuted. You've been muted. 1 second.
Okay, we back? Hey, okay. We'll do this one more time. Hi, everyone. My name is James Shotwell, and I'm going to be hosting the event today. It's so good to be with all of you, wherever you are. And before we get going too far into everything, I want to throw it first to Pamela Citrone from the world of GRI to tell us a little bit more about today's event, what we're doing here, and GRI in general. Pamela? Oh, you have to hold on 1 second. We're waiting for you to be unmuted.
Mute. Good morning, everyone. And James, thank you very much. And for everyone on the call, we want to thank you for joining us today. It appears we have a bit of a Zoom hacker of some sort. So I know behind the scenes, we are trying to get that addressed, but it appears to have taken over our chat box here. But hopefully we can work around that on the background here. But first of all, James, who will be joining us today, and our moderator and our master of ceremony, is the director of customer engagement for Halifax. But one of the things that James also does is he highlights a podcast called High Notes, and the new season for High Notes is going to kick off on the 15th of December, where he highlights celebrities that are in recovery. And so for those of you who've joined us today, I'd like to share a little bit about GRI and our partners who have made today's event possible. So for those that don't know, the Global Recovery Initiatives is the first and only national community foundation that's dedicated to strengthening the local, national infrastructure support services for those in early recovery. What we know is there's a myth that people don't recover. And in fact, 22 million people are in recovery. And as we celebrate the Association of Recovery High Schools and share with you the work that we're doing for recovery for young people is just the beginning of that journey. So we're very excited to do that, but we could not do that without support from partners. So today, one of our key partners who's co-sponsoring this event with us is Marsh. And Marsh is an organization that has supported GRI, and for everyone on this call to know, even outside of our GRI family, Marsh is very committed to the recovery movement and to the journey that we all take on substance abuse. So as an organization, their research and their resources that they're dedicating to all of us, we all owe them a great amount of gratitude. And we thank them for what they're doing for the industry as well as our organization. And so as we get started today, as GRI focuses on the mission of looking at how we support building infrastructure and support services that have proven to be directly related to reducing relapse, highlighting what we're doing for recovery schools, and today specifically recovery high schools. And we're going to hear from Andy Finch, who is, some have told me, the founder, the godfather, but Andy is our expert relative to being the person who has brought this movement forward. And then we're going to hear from individuals who have successfully gone through these programs and share their experiences with all of us. But we also, guys, are in a crisis within a crisis. So I don't think we can get on a call and not mention COVID. But what we need to understand is before COVID, we had our own epidemic on our hands. And as a result of this, you know, our resources, we have a crisis and an expanding. And I think we can all foresee the trauma on young people. So as we move forward, the work that the Association of Recovery Schools and the schools themselves really need the support to help our young people on their path to recovery. So I will stop there. We can answer any questions. I am going to turn it back to James, but my gratitude for all of you joining us. We have a number of people. I think we have over 200 people that are joining us today. Thank you to Forrest Marsh. And at the beginning, which got a little, I think, bombed out, is one of our other key partners is Better Noise. and we were playing one of the videos that they have done for recovery. And we will make sure that everybody gets that link as well after the show. So thank you all for being here today. And with that, I'll give it back to James.
Thank you, Pamela. Just so you know, I don't remember who exactly is controlling the Zoom, but if you make those of us who are speaking today co-hosts for the event, they will be able to screen share and nobody else. So that might solve some of the problems that we're still trying to work out right now. In the meantime, I want to introduce our first guest today, Dr. Andy Finch, or Dr. Andrew Finch, I think we all call him Dr. Andy around here, is a professor at Vanderbilt University and co-founded the Association of Recovery Schools in 2002. He's been a lead researcher on 2 national studies of recovery high schools, both funded by the NIDA. Among his numerous published works on recovery and education are Starting a Recovery School from 2005 and Approaches to Substance Abuse and Addiction in Educational Communities, a guide to practices that support recovery in adolescents and young adults from 2010, on which he was a co-editor. For 9 years, Dr. Finch worked for Community High School in Nashville, one of the early schools for teens recovering from alcohol and other drug addictions, and a school he helped design and open way back in 1997. But I guess everything seems long ago in 2020. Dr. Finch also helped found Vanderbilt University's Collegiate Recovery Program in 2007 and currently serves on its advisory committee. Dr. Finch's most recent project includes a recovery high school history to be published by Oxford University Press. Dr. Andy, without further ado, the floor is yours.
Thanks, James and Pam and GRI, Forest Marsh, Better Noise. This is really a wonderful opportunity, and so happy to see all the people here today to hear about recovery high schools. And I'm glad to share my screen if that will work easier to keep the person who's kind of messing with it. So just let me know if you would like me to do that. I'm also I can go without slides too. So whatever works best. So one of the things that I wanted to highlight today is the fact that recovery high schools have been around quite a while. Recovery high schools actually started in the late 1970s. And if I'm able to show my screen at some point, I'd like to show you some pictures from schools so you can kind of see that recovery high schools exist in a lot of different settings. They're in a lot of different environments, and they've been growing exponentially since the first school opened in 1979. And we saw tremendous growth in recovery high schools from the late 1980s through the early 2000s. And as we reached about 2008, we had the most recovery high schools ever at one time, which was about 43 recovery high schools. But then over the next few years, thanks in part to the recession and school budgets getting tightened, we saw a decline that lasted for about 5 years. And since that time, we've been rebuilding the number of recovery high schools, and we've seen tremendous growth. And as I'll talk about later in just a few minutes, I think this is one of the reasons why the support of the people on this call is so critical, because we're going through yet another recession and another really trying time in our country. And I think programs like this really need your support, and they really are going to need to find a way through these challenging times of COVID. As we look at the map of the United States, we can see that recovery high schools are clustered around the country. It's about 43 or so of them in existence right now. And we'll see clusters of them in the Northeast. We see a few down in Texas, but they're really scattered around. And as you can see on your screen now, there's huge pieces of the United States where there aren't recovery high schools. And I think this is one of those things that we need to pay attention to. We could see that we've seen tremendous growth in recovery high schools in some places, but not in others. And I think part of what we need to do in the coming years is understand why we have recovery high schools clustered in certain areas, but not in other places, especially since we know that the data is showing how well recovery high schools work. You can advance to the next slide, please. So I think it's important for you to understand what a recovery high school is. I mean, many people who may be on this meeting today may have heard recovery high school, heard that word. The Association of Recovery Schools that formed in 2002 actually spent quite a bit of time trying to define and distinguish recovery high schools from other types of valuable specialty programs. And they came up with criteria that define what a recovery high school is. As I mentioned, I'm going to be showing some pictures. The longest operating recovery high school in the nation is Pease Academy, and that stands for Peers Enjoying a Sober Education. And Pease Academy operates out of this church building, really just a stone's throw from the University of Minnesota in Minneapolis. And you'll see that recovery high schools find places that will host them, and oftentimes at low cost, or have facilities that are set up for schools. And this just happens to be one of them. Pease Academy opened in the late 1980s. And so we're talking about a program that's been around for 30 years plus. As you can see on this slide, the primary education of a primary purpose of a recovery high school is to educate students in recovery from substance use and co-occurring disorders. They also meet their requirements for awarding a diploma. So these aren't just programs that are here for a brief period of time to let someone catch up. Students actually graduate from these programs. Next slide, please. This is another school in Minnesota, as if the snow didn't give that away. At one point in time, there were about 16 of these schools in Minnesota, and the recession knocked quite a few of those out. So that was one of my cases in point to make, that we have to be very vigilant to not let something like that happen again. The intention of the schools is that all of the students enrolled be working a program of recovery from substance use and co-occurring disorders. And so that is the enrollment criteria. And these are available to any students that might fit that criteria. They're not closing their doors because a student maybe went through a certain treatment program and another student didn't. These are programs that are open for anybody that would meet that criteria of being in recovery and would be eligible to attend that particular school. Next slide, please. This is a pretty common picture of a recovery high school in something like an industrial plaza. Again, finding space that might be fairly low cost, accessible to people, can be formed to fit a school of moderate size. And on this slide, you can see that recovery high schools go anywhere from just a couple of students. Usually when they open their doors, there may just be a handful, on up to 100 plus. But again, we're talking very small for high school standards. Average size, about 32 students in a recovery high school. Next slide, please. This is actually a circle at Hope Academy, and we're going to hear more about Hope Academy today. This is a common sight in a recovery high school. People coming together in a sign of unity. Again, maybe a little harder now in COVID, but in times where everybody's in the building, you can see that group connection. I'm going to talk a little bit about the evidence that recovery high schools work. Next slide. So there've been a handful of studies looking at recovery high schools. One in particular that was a comparative study comparing the outcomes of students who had been through treatment. Some of them went to recovery high schools, some of them did not. And we compared those two groups just to see, for people who had received treatment, did recovery high schools have any evidence of success compared to people who didn't go to recovery high schools? And one of the things we found was on virtually every metric, the students that spent at least a month in a recovery high school did better than the students who did not. Now, some of those metrics were more statistically significant than others, and I've highlighted those here. And these are some of the things that we look forward in any type of recovery-based program. And in a school, one of the most important things is going to be, do students graduate from high school? And we saw higher graduation rates. We saw lower absenteeism. We're talking about groups of students who might frequently miss school prior. Students going into recovery high schools have lower absenteeism. And then, of course, they are focused on substance use disorders. And we see that students in recovery high schools were more likely to abstain completely from using substances. And those who did relapse would ultimately have fewer days using marijuana and other drugs after they had left treatment. Next slide, please. We ran a cost benefit analysis as well and found that the net benefits of being in a recovery high school were about $32,000. Now, cost benefit analysis isn't my specialty. There's all kinds of formulas. We worked with some folks at University of Wisconsin that do this regularly. And what I was surprised to find out is, as of today, there is no way of figuring into a cost benefit analysis the benefit of being abstinent from alcohol or drug use for an adolescent. So think about that. This is a $32,000 benefit, but they were not able to compute the value of being abstinent. There are ways to compute that for adults, but this is one of those places where the science hasn't caught up yet. So you could imagine the benefit probably is actually far higher than $32,000. And this is for programs that might cost a little bit more to run because they're smaller and have some extra programming built in. We also discovered through doing this that there was a 20 percentage point higher chance that students would graduate from high school if they attended a recovery high school than not if they had been to prior treatment. Next slide, please. I mentioned earlier attendance and completion. This just looks at the specifics of it. 5 fewer absences over the last 90 days. Now, keep in mind, in a lot of districts, if you miss 10 days of school in the year, that's pretty excessive. So you're talking about students that have some pretty high rates of absenteeism. So to see big drops like this is pretty significant. And we even predicted high school dropout and saw that the probability of high school dropout was only about 10% for recovery high school students compared to 27% for non-recovery high school students. And again, this is all data comparing students who had been to treatment before, and this was their next step. They either went to a recovery high school or not. Next slide, please. I think it's important to understand the moment that we're in. As I said, there's about 43 or so recovery high schools. You could see they're clustered in certain parts of the country. They're scattered in others. We know of anywhere of 5 to 10 more that are in the process of opening their doors right now. So we have a long way to go to get recovery high schools to everybody who might be able to benefit from one. But the recovery high schools that are existing currently are actually dealing with what everybody else is dealing with in education right now, and that's this COVID crisis. And I call this the heaviness of right now. We don't know the full impact of COVID long term. We do know that it is affecting things like referral to specialty programs. People may be willing to just kind of stay home and not go into a new school program as things stand right now. They're getting educated virtually. There's a lot of things that might be actually hurting some enrollments currently. And we've seen some of that some of the enrollment is being impacted. And even the programming that recovery high schools can offer is being altered. We also know on the positive side, they are providing support systems currently that aren't available otherwise, that they're able to check in. We know where students are, and being able to do virtual supports has been pretty critical over the last few months as COVID has been raging. But when we get on the other side of this, what are we going to see from these impacts? We know that we're seeing opioid use increase once again. We're seeing alcohol and drug use increase as people try to cope in the mental health crises that we're facing in a nation. We also know, sadly, that in times of recession, as I said earlier, we see constraints put on specialty programs, and we see programs like recovery high schools get cut. It's where school districts saying, look, we need to find ways to tighten the belt. This might be a nice program, but we just can't afford it right now. So, I hate to use an overused analogy, but this perfect storm seems to be upon us. We have perhaps more need than ever before for things like mental health and substance use supports in our schools, and yet potentially we might see some belt tightening that could threaten recovery high schools. So we need to find ways to buttress them so that they can make it through this crisis. We also know that we're at the dawn of a new administration, and every time we have a new administration, it brings up possibilities. It also brings up questions. We don't know what the future will hold. What will be the federal response to substance misuse and recovery? Also, what will be the response to education, and will recovery high schools have a priority? We have seen over the last 20 years that recovery high schools have made it into the federal landscape, and people know what recovery high schools are at the federal level and on many state levels. But we need efforts like this to continue explaining to the public not only what recovery high schools are, but how important they are and how they need continual support, ongoing support as we move forward. Next slide. And I want to close with an evaluation that actually just came out in the last week or so. It was an evaluation done of the 5 recovery high schools in the state of Massachusetts, 3 of which have been operating since 2006. And this was a pretty powerful statement that was in this evaluation. They spent a bit of time over the last year visiting all of the schools, interviewing students, looking at that programming. And it was a group of people that went in to do the study that prior to the study didn't have a lot of knowledge about recovery high schools. They really did their homework. They looked at the research, but they were really going in as close to a blank slate as you can get. And in one of their closing statements of the report, it just jumped out at me. I felt like I needed to include it today. That they actually titled the report, "This School Saved My Life." So there's an evaluation report done by a government contracted organization. This is what they title it. And here's a quote: "Whether stated figuratively or literally, multiple students in multiple sites expressed the life-sustaining nature of these programs. After extensive study and consideration, we believe that without these programs, dozens of our state's young people would be substantially worse off, both in terms of their academic and their recovery progress. Without these programs, dozens of young people would be substantially worse off." So I hope that statement sticks with you. We're going to hear from a number of people here in the next few minutes who can speak to the power of recovery high schools. And I really thank you for taking time out of your day today to hear these stories and to learn more about recovery high schools. And we welcome your support.
Hello again, everyone. Thank you so much, Dr. Andy. That was wonderful to hear from you. And you're absolutely right. We are going to hear from some students. And our first speaker that's coming up next is Shaman Warden, who is I might butcher this school name really bad, and I apologize so much. Ostagai High School graduate from Boston. I want to remind you real quick that we are going to do a Q&A portion later today. Obviously, our chat is disabled right now, so if you can use the raise your hand option, that will allow you to kind of get on our radar, and we will review the people that have raised their hands, and we'll try to get those questions answered for you later today. There's also an ability for you to donate that we want to make you aware of, because that is why we're doing our event today. So if you'd like to donate, please go to globalrecoveryinitiatives.org. That's globalrecoveryinitiatives.org, and do that. But for right now, I'd love to hear what Shaman has to share with us. Shaman?
Good morning, everybody. I'm thankful for the opportunity here to speak today. Once again, I'm Shaman Morden from William J. Ostagai High School in Boston. My high school story didn't start there, but I'm glad it ended there. My journey started back in Texas. That's where I grew up. And growing up, I was like pretty average kid. I had like a lot of home issues. I ended up moving a lot. But like school-wise, I would say everything was pretty much okay. I did well in middle school. I did well in elementary school, and things didn't really get bad until I started high school. And because like the pressure of like, oh, where I'm going to go to college, peer pressure, and things at home weren't going so well. And I had a lot of anxiety that wasn't getting met by like teachers and school counselors. Like I stopped going to school. I was staying home a lot, and my teachers like didn't really seem concerned. They just like called and like said, you're missing school, you're missing school. And that was like the big issue, but they didn't like seem to be concerned with my mental health. And at the time, like my use was just marijuana, but then that um, escalated into pills, drinking, hallucinogens, all that stuff. And it got to the point where I didn't care about school, I didn't care about my education, and I eventually ended up having a suicide attempt. And after that, my school was notified, but then like I was expected to go back to normal. Nobody really like seemed to care, and that just like completely disconnected me from school in general. I wasn't interested, and like I was like screw it. And it got to the point where I decided to move to Boston because I thought that would like fix all my issues moving with my dad. And I was introduced to Osage High School at first, and I chose not to go because like recovery high school, I didn't know how that was gonna work. I was like scared. I was kind of scared to admit that I had a problem. And yeah, but eventually I went to a normal high school and I fell into the same trap. I was doing all the same things. I almost failed out again, and I ended up in a place called Cushion House. Cushion House is a recovery house in Boston, Massachusetts. Serves the age of 16 to 21 for male and female students, and yeah, and it refers you to Osage High School back where I would have originally have gone. And when I got there, you can feel the difference from the staff. They're really interested in like me and me as a person. Like if I have a bad day, all the staff knows me. My principal Roger, who's also in the chat, he'll come in and talk to me. He'll call my phone. When COVID started and I finished up this year, and my computer wasn't working, he'll come to my house personally, and the staff was so much more invested and made me motivated to stay in school and continue my education. We have a peer-to-peer counselor named Dan. If I'm having a stressful day, I could go and talk to him. Um, all the staff, all the teachers were just really there, and you're close to your students, like your fellow peers. And like we have recovery group every Wednesday, and a speaker comes in, and we just take time to reflect on like what we're going through. And like it's a lot easier to unwind and like talk about your feelings because you know like the student in the next chair is going through the same thing that you're going through. Um, they'll have like speakers come in and they're going through the same thing you're going through, so you can like relate to everybody, and it just makes it a really comfortable environment. And if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have graduated high school. Um, Now I'm going to community college in Bunker Hill for sociology, and I'm just like thankful for the opportunity because I knew if I didn't go to Osagai, my life probably would have been worse. I probably would have been on like the streets, and I've seen what happens when students don't like commit. But all of the staff at Osagai make sure like they'll do their best. Like if you don't go to school, they'll track you down, they'll hunt you down, they'll make sure you're doing the right thing. And it's annoying at first, but I'm so thankful for it because I wouldn't be where I am today. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shimon. It was great to hear from you. I appreciate you sharing your story with us today. And up next, we have Sarah Platt, who is a peer specialist and a graduate of Hope Academy in Indianapolis. Sarah, would you care to share with us?
Yes, thank you. So, as you said, my name is Sarah. I went to Hope Academy for 2 years, and I was just recently thinking how this event could not have come at a better time. I have a sister in high school, and every time I see her, go off to school or work on her homework, I think to myself, I am so thankful I am not in high school right now, because it would be a million more times difficult than it was when I was in high school. But to give you a little background, I was like kind of what Shimon said. I was a really good student. I didn't have a lot of issues. I was really, really good in school, lots of honor classes. Um, and when I got to high school, it kind of changed for me. I think one, got in with the wrong crowd, two, had a lot of anxiety, three, had a lot of depression, and four, I was a high schooler, and I think that's the big thing. High schoolers are really impressionable, and everyone wants to fit in and be somebody when you're in high school. Um, so I was 14 and 15, and I had kind of unknowingly thrown myself into what was kind of the infancy of my drug addiction. And I had never heard about drug addiction. I didn't know what an alcoholic was. I was just kind of doing whatever I could do to get by. And it kind of stopped being a hobby and started being something that I needed to do, and started to be something that I needed to do to get up in the morning and to be able to go to school. So I went, you can hear my dog. So I went into rehab the summer of my sophomore year, and when I was there, I heard about a high school called Hope Academy. Um, and I remember at that time in my life, I really didn't care about much. There wasn't really a lot that piqued my interest. When I heard about that, I was like, you're serious? There's somewhere I can go, or I might not have to feel like this. And I think I'm one of the rare ones that decided to go to Hope, decided to go to a recovery high school instead of kind of being forced into it. But it, it was hands down the best decision I've ever made. It had to have been divine intervention, because without that high school, I can 100% tell you I would not be where I am today. I think a common misconception is that people think that you go to a high school like that and you're there for a year and then you're healed, you're better. You know, there's your drug addictions no more. And that's really not the case, unfortunately. But when you go there, you're met with so much love. And I know it's kind of a weird thing to think of, like, going to school and having people care about you there so deeply, but that's really what it is. You're surrounded by teenagers. So sorry. You're surrounded by teenagers that haven't had the same kind of that have had the same kind of life that you have, and that have kind of had their childhood ripped away from them as well. And to be able to bond with people like that and to have teachers that understand what you're going through is absolutely, absolutely priceless. So I think when you donate to a recovery school, or when you decide to support a recovery school, you're not, only helping kids graduate college, you're helping kids get their lives back. You're helping families get their daughter and their sons back, and you're helping siblings get their brothers and sisters back. And I think it's weird to think that something so small could have such a huge impact, but it really can. We're kind of talking about people's lives here. And it's crazy to me that I get to work somewhere and kind of do the same things that other people did for me. But it's just been an incredible privilege. And I can't tell you how thankful I am to Hope Academy and to the staff, and to be here speaking with you guys today. I apologize for my dog. Thank you.
That's okay. Thank you so much, Sarah. We love dogs here and we love to hear your story. So again, thank you for sharing. Before I bring on our next guest, I do want to remind you that if you have a question that you would like to be answered by our panel here in a few minutes, you can go ahead and use the raise your hand option here on Zoom, and we will try to answer as many of those as we can during our time together. And also, if you're enjoying these stories and you would like to donate to the foundation, please go to globalrecoveryinitiatives.org. Make sure it's .org, and that would be wonderfully appreciated by all of us. Now, to keep things moving along, I want to introduce Angela Smith. She is the head of school at the Bridgeway School in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Angela, the floor is yours.
Good morning. Can you hear me? Can you hear me well? Okay, great. Good morning. I'm very happy to be here. Again, my name is Angela Smith, and I am head of the Bridgeway School in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. At Bridgeway, we focus on the academic recovery of students, but also emotional and their sobriety. Students need to be in 9th through 12th grade to come work with us. And it does require that students are sober, that they have some time, but we also make it a point to make a requirement of ourselves that we have to support that at every turn. This work is not just a job for me, and I'm sitting here now. I had all these things to say, and after hearing Shaman and Sarah speak, it makes me kind of emotional because I don't know them, but I know them in my heart. And so this job it's not just a job for me. This is the work that I feel is my purpose, and it's very personal. I'm passionate about working with youth. I always have been. I want them to be seen. I want them to be heard. I want them to be valued and frankly loved. And I seek to help them raise up their voices, or for those of them that don't know that they have voice and choice, to actually find that, and in that have the power to change the trajectory of their lives. As a person in recovery, I can't think of any better way to be of service and in service than working with the youth that I serve every day. No one could have told me. I mean, you could have sat me down and been like, look, in your future, I see you couldn't have gotten me to believe for 100 years that I would be head of anything, let alone head of a school. I lacked confidence. I lacked direction. I spent a good part of my life feeling really afraid, feeling less than and alone. And eventually I found myself really depressed and so riddled with depression and anxiety that I was just really isolated. And I turned to alcohol as a way to, get out of that space. And it worked for a while as a coping mechanism until it didn't. And I'm thankful that there were people in my life that saw me and really heard me and dropped some seeds in my path. For me, that didn't come along until my 40s. So again, this is really important work for me to try and have this level of engagement with youth at the ages that they're at in high schools. The folks that dropped those seeds in my path really were, for me, the people who changed my life. They loved me, they tended to me, they cared for me until I was able to root. And that was really it. You can't bloom if you can't root. And they did that for me. They celebrated my growth, every little leaf, every little, change in the things that I did, and they directed me. Um, I heard someone talk about growth and recovery in terms of life and plant life, and I think of that when I think of the direction that they gave me, kind of winding me in the right directions until I could figure out what was the right direction to go in for myself. And that's what I want to do with youth. I make it a point to try and do that every single day here at Bridgeway. And I was happy to hear Sarah mention the word love. That really, for me, that's my motto. I lead with love. If I start there, everything else makes sense. If I love myself, I can be willing, I can be patient, I can accept, my own shortcomings and move those things aside to be in the service of youth. If I lead with love, it gives me an opportunity to really seek to understand my students instead of being understood, and the same with my staff, and everything else works itself out. And when you think about what we all really want as adults, as people in the world, but especially youth, being cared for, being loved, having a sense of belonging, which is important for students in high school and important in any place for any of us, knowing that they're not alone, and also knowing that boundaries equal love too. Requiring students to be sober is not a difficult thing for me at all. It's a boundary. Taking a look at behaviors, taking a look at academics, all of those things, they set up hopefully a path that students can walk on to become the people that they don't even know that they could be. But as educators and administrators, we see it in them the moment that they hit our doors. So I'm incredibly thankful to be in this work. I'm incredibly thankful to be here with you all today and to be in the presence of people like Shimon and Sarah who have walked on this journey as well. And let's all continue to tend, to plant seeds, to love, to care for, and help students find their direction in their journey to recovery.
Thank you
Thank you.
so much. Oh, sorry. Thank you so much for sharing. That was wonderful. And we have reached the part of the event where we would like to answer a few questions if anyone viewing has it. So if you can, maybe just raise your hands if you don't know how to do the make a gesture on the actual lineup of participants. If you want to raise your hand, I'm sure Sabrina can highlight you and we will pass it on to the panel for answering. While we give that a second here, I just wanted to say, Angela, I very much relate to what you just said about learning to lead with love. Something that we say around our household here. There are some days where I feel like when things just aren't going our way, we have to take a step back and be like, you know what? We're just going to count this day as a loss and keep on going. And it teaches us to learn to lead with love, even in our interpersonal relationships. To be like, some days we're just going to get a big old zero. It's okay. It's fine. We'll just keep going. If anything comes up, Sabrina, can you please let me know and we will move forward from there, everyone. So please don't be shy. We're very friendly. Oh, I see one. Kimberly Brown here has one. Is there a chance that we could possibly highlight her or unmute her and allow her to ask her question?
Hi,
You're
everyone.
unmuted.
I just want to tell you that I am so grateful to be able to be part of this today and hear these stories. I am a clinical supervisor in the field of recovery. And I know that right now we face a lot of challenges because we need programs for kiddos to be able to understand recovery, understand that they can recover. And there's no programs. I was just asked about this morning. Do you have any programs for an adolescent? And we don't. And it's extremely sad, but I just want to tell you guys, I'm so proud of you, Sarah and Siobhan, I think that you guys have an amazing road and you have a lot to offer, and keep going. And Angela, thank you for the work that you do. I wish that there was more of you that would be involved in a child's life. I always think that if I can get them as early as I can, we can make a difference. And unfortunately, we don't see people coming into recovery until they're older, like you had expressed, like 40 years old, and there's so much time wasted. So I'm really grateful to be here and hear these stories and keep going with the work that you are all doing. You're amazing.
Thank you so much.
I believe that we might have another one here. Sabrina, can you help me out? Angela, I believe. Is that the next question? Ashley. Ashley. Is there an Ashley that has a question?
Yes, that is me. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
I got invited to this a little late, and I apologize. I'm unshowered because I'm in quarantine right now due to with my 3-year-old daughter that you can clearly hear in the background. So I'm going to go upstairs, but I just want to say thank you for this invite. I go by AK. I am recently recognized as the girl who shares her entire life of sobriety on the internet with ghostinmybedroom.com. I have found sobriety and it has changed my life. And I've reached a level of happy that I believe transparency is key. And I think that, I'm just inspired by anyone that shares their story. And listening here is phenomenal. I work on a platform because what I needed when I was struggling was things to not be so serious. I think this recovery business is too serious. So I always say I am cynical, not clinical. And it has proven to invite a lot of people to come forward, to discuss their stories and hit some people in the feels. And I'm just really excited to be a part of this and connect with all of you because I think recovery is badass. It's changed my life, and I'm ready to do whatever I can to be a part of this. So just thank you so much again, and honored to be here and hear all of your stories. I think recovery high schools are where it's at. So let's do this. Thank you again.
Thank you for your input. Now, before we call on the next person, I do want to remind everyone that we are seeking donations today. So if you feel moved to give, please visit globalrecoveryinitiatives.org and you can make your donations there. And of course, we will be making a recording of this event available afterwards. So if you know somebody who wishes they could be here, or if you're watching now thinking, oh my gosh, I wish so-and-so was here to see this, please be on the lookout for that link and share it with them. We would love to have as many people see this as possible. Now, I believe that there is a Molly out there who has some comments that they want to share with the panel. Molly, are you there?
Hi, I'm Molly McCaughan. I am a board member of GRI, but also a person in long-term recovery. I was talking about recovery high schools with one of my sponsees the other day, and she said, I would never want to separate my child from the world. This isn't the way it should work. And yet we all know that you need that separation, that your peers who were drinking and drugging along with you are not the peers that you are going to recover with. And I'd like to ask both Sarah and Shimon how they have fared with making new friends, joining into society while still being in a school that's separating them in order to keep them safe.
Ladies first.
Sorry, okay, I was muted, but I'm unmuted now. Well, I think fortunately I kind of got to skip the part where I kind of had like weird, awkward high school friends, and then I like went to college and like never talked to them again, and it was just kind of like uncomfortable. I think I got to make a lot of like really, really genuine friends. Because a lot of my friends are either A, in recovery, or B, they've seen me go through what I went through and stayed friends with me anyway. So I think I've got to kind of have a connection that is a lot deeper than a lot of the people my age get to have. and they really have kind of saved my life, you know, like being able to have people that you can relate to and that can help you get through, you know, whatever you're getting through is a huge game changer.
Ramon? Oh, there you
All
are.
right. Yeah, for me, almost kind of the same thing, because like the majority of the people that I was using with were in Texas, and when I moved to Boston, things happened so quickly that I got into like recovery. So I was only connected to a few people that I would actually use with, and once I started recovery, I connected with them, and once they found out that I was in recovery, like you don't necessarily drop them; they'll drop you because they'll realize you're not like fun anymore. And but making friends was like pretty easy because you connect so much easier and you have a deeper connection with like other kids your age who's like going through the same thing, and when you go to like meetings and stuff. And plus I lived in a group house with like other kids my age, and I'm still friends with a few of them, so I like you don't feel disconnected at all. If anything, I feel like made better connections in recovery than anything else.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you both for sharing with us again. Now, we do have to move on, so any other questions that you may have, we can answer after the event. Somebody will be, oh, sorry, we do have one more. We have time for one more. Luckily, we fit one in under the radar. There is a Connie out there who has something she'd like to say to the panel. Connie, are you available? Connie?
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Can
we
you hear
can.
me?
Hello, Connie.
You are, okay. My mute button is working overtime. So this has been really fascinating, enlightening, and it's wonderful. And I guess where my thoughts keep trending toward is, so post pandemic, post COVID, as we move into a world where hopefully, you know, at least the pressures, extraordinary pressures of the pandemic are mitigated. You know, how do you see, how do we see individual recovery continuing along with societal recovery? How do we see that happening? What does that future look like? Big question, broad question.
Who would like to jump in here?
Hi, this is Angela. I'll jump in. That is a big question, Connie, but thank you. Yes, we have a lot of healing to do, obviously, as a nation, you know, with the virus and everything. In terms of recovery, I think that journey for most people, you continue to just take the next right step. You rely on whatever your program is, whatever those principles are, to help that healing move along. I can say for myself, in the time of COVID, my community and the larger community stepped right up, and we have Zoom meetings for, you know, for AA meetings for me, and that fellowship continues. It's in a very different way, but it continues. I think that most people, because of our climate in our country, through sickness, through civil unrest, have been even more inclined in recovery to be in service and to find acts of service at every turn, whether it's picking up more sponsees because it may be easier to navigate because they're online now, whether it's speaking at other meetings. And you can do that now in other, you know, cities, other states, even other countries via Zoom. So I've seen people really broadening that scope of that healing and that recovery piece. So I see that continuing. And in terms of working with students in recovery in our schools, I'm confident, without knowing every administrator on this line, that we will turn over every possible stone to make sure that we give students what they need. So if it's virtual classes, if it's, you know, doing learning on a lawn in front of people's houses, or, you know, in a hallway, socially distanced 6 feet, whatever that requires, we'll do. So I'm not concerned that that will stop. It will only get better because we'll be more inventive with how to support them.
Anyone care to chime in and add to Angela's thoughts?
I totally.
Go ahead, Sarah.
I would say I totally agree with her. I'm sorry, Connie. I was just having trouble like trying to find an answer to your question, but I think Angela really did well. So thank you.
Dr. Andy?
Yeah, I was just going to say that I hope what we're realizing now is the importance of human connection. And I just think my hope is when we get on the other side of COVID, the programs that have always embraced it, like recovery high schools, will be valued even more for what they provide to the community. So that's my hope, that we're learning how important human connection is right now. And these are the spaces where it happens.
Yeah, I guess she said like recovery during COVID. I guess for me, like Angela said, the online meetings, they kind of don't feel the same, but like anybody like who knows like the AA program, like the 12 steps, I would say like doing that during the pandemic has really been helping me. It gives you a lot more time for like self-reflection, and like for me, I have a lot of family members here that I haven't connected with, and since I've been here, like connecting towards like family too, and like just focusing on yourself and like finding new hobbies, because like people forget that's also a part of like recovery too. So like just focusing on like the other aspects, because like sometimes it's like hard to actually like go to a meeting, or sometimes like people have like computer issues, but like if you focus on the other aspects, then I think you'll be fine.
Thank you all for sharing your responses. Now, we do have to move on. So if you have any additional questions, please do not hesitate to reach out and ask. Somebody will try to get you an answer as soon as possible. But before we let you go, and while you're still considering donating to the cause, you can obviously once again visit globalrecoveryinitiatives.org to do so. Donations will be available through the end of the year. But right now, we'd like to show you a video celebrating the impact of these programs and the way that they can change lives. So Sabrina, I believe you're going to lead us into that.
How's it going? Seth is somebody that I grew up with. We've known each other since 4th grade. He is someone that I have really looked up to. Seth works as a drug and alcohol counselor at a high school that is based around recovery. So this is kids that have been kicked out of school, have had troubles in regular public school, and instead of having to drop out, instead of having to just get their GED, there's an alternative. I'm Ben, I'm an alcoholic and an addict. Amen. For me, there was this drastic difference between the loaded me versus the sober me. And in high school, I always knew that I wanted to get sober, because when I would put drugs and alcohol in my body, I couldn't make music. The pen would completely stop moving. I would just stare at a piece of paper. The raps that I wrote sucked. If it wasn't for sobriety, I would have never developed my passion for music. I'm interested in hearing from you guys where you were at and where you're at now, and how this school has helped you.
The first time I started using opiates was with my mom, and she was giving me painkillers for my stomach aches. I didn't really think I was an addict. I was like, no, I'm not an addict. I can stop whenever I want. I just don't want to stop. The school I used to go to, like, people are just using heroin in the bathroom. At this school, like, they actually care here. They actually care about your education. They actually care about your sobriety. It's like so much better. My life is so much better. I don't have to worry about being sick and not being able to hang out because I don't have drugs.
It's not treatment school. It's not like court-ordered school. You know, it's really supposed to be, and usually is, by their own volition, their own choice to do this.
Do you think it's working?
I absolutely think it's working.
You're seeing it?
Yeah, this is the only place that I've ever seen where recovery and sobriety is like, cool.
Yeah.
That's the deal.
Yeah.
That is the driving force behind the whole thing.
Being in a recovery community, going to school, being with each other in classes, is that a huge difference from what it was in a normal high school where you have people obviously using, or the majority using, or whatever the ratio is?
Imagine being at a regular high school and being a drug addict. Like, there's so much rejection, so much judgments, like not a lot of help. So here, where you're like with a bunch of people that are like you, like that actually go through the same shit that you go through, like you can relate and you can tell that there's hope for me. It's gonna get better. Like, I see there's like real life proof here that there's hope and that things will get better.
Thank you so much for sharing that video with us. Now, as I said earlier, we did record this event. So if you missed part of it or you want to share it with somebody, it will be available in the near future. And if you want to donate, you can always visit globalrecoveryinitiatives.org. Now, I want to throw it back to where we started this by talking to our friend Pamela Citron with her closing remarks. Pamela?
Well, thank you, James. And I mean, I think I'm as touched as everyone else here is. And, as being able to be of service and have the privilege of working as the interim director at GRI and having you all support us today is amazing. But I think we need to look at these young people. I have been in recovery for 12 years, but I am so inspired when I look at the younger people. And it's hard. I can't imagine. I have two young children, or now in college and high school. But we need to have these resources available all over the country. And the work that all of these schools are doing and the bravery of the young people, our hats are all off to you. But we need to be able to make this a national opportunity. And so as we look at infrastructure, as we look at where we put our resources, GRI's purpose is to raise and donate, raise our donations, and then we allocate those to places like the Association for Recovery High Schools. And, so we thank you guys for participating today. I will apologize for our hacking or our Zoom things or whatever. I guess that's the world of the new meetings we live in. But Forest Marsh, thank you so much behind the scenes over there. I think you guys were working behind there. I'm afraid a few people, I was getting some text didn't get in because we tried to shut it down so it didn't get completely bombed. So as James shared, we will be, we've recorded it and we can share it. And so if you have somebody that you've shared the link with and wasn't able to get added today due to some of the technical difficulties, we can share that video and we'll send everybody a link to it as well after this. But today was to really celebrate the bravery and just the amazing accomplishments of not only the team, the administration, Andy's work, but most importantly, all of the young people in recovery. And what an amazing example you're setting, not only for young people in recovery, but for young people all over the world. So I thank everybody today. I thank you, James, for helping us. Andy, keep up all this research. We can all learn from all the work you do every day. And to all of the people that support GRI, and I believe we have a number of our board members today. So on behalf of all of us, much gratitude. We wish everybody a safe, healthy holiday season. And I encourage everybody to make sure we all stay mentally balanced as we're going through our interesting times that are upon us.
Well, thank you, Pamela. I believe that is everything for our event today. So thank you all again so much for joining us. If we can get a round of applause for everybody that spoke today, everyone that came here, everyone that's sharing their story, everyone caught in the struggle. We're here. You're seen. We love to hear from you, and there's people here to support you. So thank you for being here. Have a wonderful weekend and a great holiday. Stay safe, and you'll probably be hearing from the GRI team in the near future. Thank you so much.